What is up, everybody? Now, if you watch a lot of my videos, this record might look familiar to you. That's because my last two videos were the songs from both sides of this record. I put quotation marks around songs because the music is not complete. As you can see, it's flaked off here, and it's flaked off here. Now, if you're used to records, before we jump into the details and about what makes this record so interesting, let me quickly gloss over some details on the 78 RPM record format and some other technical details really quickly. Basically, if you're used to modern records, this might look very different to you. This is a 78 RPM record. Most of y'all if you're used to seeing records, are probably used to the LP and 45 RPM single micro groove record. But this is a coarse groove 78. It has a groove that is 3 times larger than the micro groove records and spins at a much higher speed, spinning at roughly 78 RPM. I say roughly because it's 78-ish. Sometimes it's a bit faster, sometimes it's a bit slower. Some were designed to spin at 80 RPM. It's kind of all over the place. The whole 78 format in general is just all over the place. Now, a lot of people who are into records probably already knew all of that. And even if you know about 78s and have handled them or whatever, this will still look different and unique to you because a 78 normally looks like this. It's usually made out of a fragile but hard shellac instead of the vinyl that a lot of modern records are, but it still has the coarse groove I told you about. And these were designed to be played on acoustic record players with a steel needle that would wear out after playing 2 sides of a record. The reason is these hard shellac records have an abrasive in them, so the needle wears out instead of the record. And if you're wondering, here's what one of those needles looks like. I forgot to mention this in the video, but the reason the steel needles wear out so quickly and modern styluses don't is because the old acoustic gramophone record players would put the entire weight of the reproducer on the steel needle, which is why it wore out so quickly and caused so much wear. However, if you have a modern record player, it barely touches the record, and that's why modern needles don't really wear out. However, while the stylus on a modern electronic turntable won't wear out or cause damage to the record over time if it's balanced correctly, however, if you do decide to play 78s on a modern turntable, you do need to get a separate stylus that's designed for the coarse grooves on a 78. It won't wear out because modern electronic styluses barely touch the record, but you need a different stylus with a different needle shape to handle the coarse groove on a 78. But this record is not that at all. It still has a coarse groove and it's still a 78. But it was definitely not designed to be played on an acoustic player with a steel needle. This is a cut lacquer record. Basically what that means is instead of being a shellac record that was mass produced with a stamping machine, these records were individually cut one at a time. So they would be put on a special record cutting lathe and they would play the music back at normal regular speeds, cut one side, cut the other. They would make these one at a time. So these were used for unique one-off recordings before they had magnetic tape or any other way of recording audio. And they were also used for when making records, when they only needed to make a handful of records and it didn't justify the expense of pressing a Shellac 78. However, another way these were utilized, and these were utilized for specific applications like that, another way these were utilized was to copy other records. So there would be a Shellac 78, but sometimes they would have a situation where these were out of production, but they still needed to send one to a radio station or something, or for whatever reason they needed a copy, they would copy it to a Cut 78. So some of these records are actually copies of other shellac records. Now, with all that technical stuff out of the way, let's get to what makes this record special. First of all, it's by an artist that doesn't appear to exist. I've done a lot of research, and I did find a very short Wikipedia page on a Bill Vernon, that was in the music industry. But that Bill Vernon was a bluegrass DJ that was active between the 60s to the 80s-ish. And this record appears to be from around the 40s or 50s. So that timeline doesn't really make sense at all. So it most likely is some musician that's completely lost to history. It has the song Faded Rose, which is a song other musicians have made. Now, this is a different recording from it, from some guy we don't know anything about, but we know the song and other musicians have made the song. And fortunately, we got almost the entire song, only a little bit of the beginning is gone. But the song on side B is much more heavily damaged, and I was only able to get the last half because this flaked off before I got the record. And this side is the song There's a Rope Around My Picture. Now, I uploaded both of these songs to my YouTube channel. I'll probably link those into the description, just in case you'll want to watch those videos with these songs. But this side, There's a Rope Around My Picture, is a song that doesn't exist. No other song I could find is this song. This is completely unique. And the last part I was able to play was really good. It's a really good song. So it's unfortunate we can't play the entire thing. However, I did some extensive research, and I have good news. I also have bad news. Let's start out with the good news. So, you know how I said that sometimes these records were used for one-off recordings, but other times they were used to copy Shellac 78s when the Shellac 78s were out of production and or just for whatever reason? Well, up here we have a name and a number. And I'll show a picture on screen now of an up close of this record label. And I looked up the name of that, and the Versity name was a record label. So this was a record label that started in, I think, 1938 or 1939, and went bankrupt in 1940. So it was a record label that was only active for like 2 years, apparently. I found some other records online from Versity that were later records that said to be from later, but I think that was just a dating mistake. I think this company was actually only active for a year or two, which would make sense why this song is unheard of and I can't find it anywhere. Also, that's about this company, but what that also means is this record is not one of a kind. That means this record is a copy of a Shellac 78. So this record is actually copied of an original Shellac 78. And the original 78 would have had to been from when this company was originally active, from 1930 whatever to 1940. But this record copy could have been made much later. It could have been made 10, 20 years later in like the 50s for all I know. But that means this record is not one of a kind, and there's more Shellac 78s out there with this song. And I did some more research online and looked for this unique song, because this song is unique to this record. Faded Rose is on other musicians, but There's a Rope Around My Picture is unique to this record. So I looked this up and found a Smithsonian, like, American History archival page that describes this record. It describes side A, it describes side B, like talks about the name, it says by Bill Vernon. It does not have a picture, but that archive does prove there are Shellac 78s of these songs that are out there. So that's the good news. Now let's get to the bad news. It's still really rare. I assume they only made a few hundred or a few thousand of these. 78 RPMs wear out sometimes and they get destroyed, which means the amount of them that are around today, they could still be out there, but it could be one of the rarer records. Also, that Smithsonian Archive American History archival entry sounds promising and proves another one of these exists. But I'm the only one who's put this recording online. I could not find a recording of that record, and I also found a list of all of the Veracity records, or Versity records that were produced. I really don't know how you pronounce that, by the way. And the list was incomplete and skipped over many numbers. One of the numbers that it skipped over was 5107, which is what this record is. So basically, that's the end of the video. To quickly recap, the good news is that this one-of-a-kind song is not alone, and somewhere exists a Shellac 78 with this music. The bad news is the only other one that I found proof of existing is in some archive somewhere and hasn't been digitized, hasn't even been photographed. And the list I found for the Veracity records does not include number 5107, which is what this record is. So, I guess that's the end of the video. Bye.